In November of 1910, the 6 private bankers who created the Fed met secretly at a train station in New Jersey, fully disguised and only using their first names. They boarded Nelson Aldrich's private train car. The men would travel through the night to Jekyll Island, a coastal island off Georgia's southeastern shore. Interesting fact about Jekyll is that some of the oldest pottery found in North America comes from this region. Also, apparently actual giant skeletons have been found in Jekyll Island. More on that later. The Jekyll Island Club was an exclusive private playground for the wealthiest people in the world. The Morgans, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, and the Pulitzers, just to name a few. For these 9 days that the bankers were at the club, all the regular staff was replaced with temporary staff. They wanted total secrecy. They said that the trip was for duck hunting. The actual purpose was something far more sinister than that. So far, we know that an evil plan was hatched in Jekyll Island in 1910. But before we go any further, let's introduce the main characters. What did these men have in common? Well, these men represented a fourth of the world's wealth. They were also representatives of the world's leading banks: Morgan, Rockefeller, Rothschilds, Warburg, and Kuhnloeb and Company. From the Morgan Bank, we have Nelson Aldrich. The New Jersey senator held the powerful position as Republican Party whip. He was close business associates with J.P. Morgan. He was also the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr. Now, side note, there were a lot of marriages within these bank families. The House of Rothschild celebrated 29 marriages of cousins in order to maintain control over the family business. But they'll get their own special episode later. From the Morgans was also Henry P. Davidson and Benjamin Strong. Representing the Rockefellers and the House of Kuhnloeb and Company was Frank Vanderlip. Representing Kuhnloeb, the Rothschilds, and the Warburgs, Daddy Warbucks himself, Paul Warburg. Literally, he inspired the character from Little Orphan Annie. Within 9 years of his arrival from Germany to America, he had become one of the wealthiest men in the country because of his monopoly on the railroad system. The 6th man didn't represent any of the banks. He represented the government, the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Abraham Andrew. So what did these men plan to gain from this mysterious meeting? And why Jekyll Island? Stay tuned. There's a lot more to come. So what were these rich and powerful men even discussing? Well, at the J.P. Morgan-owned Jekyll Island Club, a new financial plan for America would soon emerge. This plan would guarantee that the rich stayed rich and the poor would stay poor. This plan was designed to actually confuse the average American, introducing a new hidden tax called inflation. This would kick off a consistent economic boom-bust cycle of prosperity followed by depression. This plan introduced a new central banking system that would create a monopoly on wealth that is still very much alive and thriving today. The alleged brains behind the whole operation was Daddy Warbucks himself, Paul Warburg, the billionaire with close ties to the wealthiest bankers in Europe, and quite possibly the most powerful family in the entire world, the Rothschilds. Now, side note, this family learned the art of political power by funding both sides of the Napoleonic Wars. This is a strategy that we will see repeated throughout most major wars in history. In 9 days, these men had created the blueprint for the Federal Reserve. Secrecy was essential from the moment of inception into passing into legislation December 23rd, 1913, when most of Congress was out of town on Christmas holidays. You see, these bankers knew that there was going to be opposition. So who was the opposition? And what were they going to do to ensure that no one was going to infiltrate their plan? And why Georgia? And what does the Federal Reserve even do? Stay tuned. There's a lot more to cover.